In this video, we're going to talk about ordering decimals, and we're also going to talk about rounding decimals. So we have three different ways that we are going to spend talking about ordering decimals. And our three different ways are using a commonplace value, which this is basically a common denominator. And then lining up the place values and then using the number line. So the example that we're going to do all three methods with is these four decimals. So if we practice reading this, this is the number 14 and it's in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place. So this would be 14 thousandths. This would be the number 13. The 3's in the hundredths place, so 13 hundredths. This would be the decimal 1 and 14 hundredths. And this would be the decimal 16 thousandths. Okay, so the first method let's do is, let's use the commonplace value. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get a common denominator. I'm going to turn these into fractions and get a common denominator. Okay, so for the first one, 14 thousandths, my fraction would be 14 on top. The 4 is in the thousandths place, so 1,000 on bottom. Okay, so the next decimal, 13 hundredths, would be a 13 on top, 100 on bottom. 1 and 14 hundredths would be the the fraction 1 whole and 14 over 100, which we could also make that into an improper fraction if you wanted to. You don't have to though. And then the last one, 16 thousandths, would be the number 16 on top, 1,000 on bottom. So if I'm comparing these as fractions, I can't do it right now. I mean, I know the 1 and 14 hundredths would be the biggest one, obviously, because that has a whole and then the rest of them have a whole. But I can't really compare them because they don't have equal pieces. This one has 1,000 pieces, make a whole. This has 100 pieces, make a whole. 100 pieces, make a whole. 1,000 pieces, make a whole. So if I got a common denominator, it would help me compare them a little bit better. So let's make them all into 1,000 pieces, make a whole. So the first one I'm going to multiply by, the second one, 13 hundredths, I'm going to multiply by 10 on bottom and on top. And I get 130 out of 1,000. And the second one I'm going to do the same, the third one I'm going to do the same thing. Multiply bottom and top by 10. And so I get 1 and 140 thousandths. And so now it's a lot easier to see. For each of these, 1,000 make a whole. So if I'm putting in the order from least to greatest, which would the smallest be? 14 pieces, 130 pieces, a whole plus 140 pieces, or 16 pieces. Well, obviously 14 pieces is my smallest one. Okay, so the decimal 14 thousandths is my smallest decimal. My next smallest decimal would be 130 pieces, a whole and 140 pieces, or 16 pieces. Obviously 16 pieces. So the decimal 16 thousandths. And now between these two, obviously 130 thousandths is a lot smaller than a whole plus 140 thousandths. So that would be 3 and that would be 4. So the decimal 13 hundredths and 1 and 14 hundredths. And that is my decimals in order from least to greatest. Okay, so that's doing the problem getting a common denominator using fractions. Now let's do it just lining up our place values. Okay, so lining up place values. It's the same problem. So let me rewrite my numbers here. 14 thousandths, 13 hundredths, 1 and 14 hundredths, and 16 thousandths. Okay, so lining up the place values, this reminds me of putting things in like alphabetical order, because it's the same idea. Alphabetical order. It's the same idea as alphabetical order. So basically I'm just going to line them all up vertically. So 0.014, 0.13, 1.14, 0.016. So line them up. All my ones places are in the same column. My decimals are in the same column.
tenths, hundredths, thousands. These two don't have a thousands place, so put in a 0 for a placeholder so that we can compare them. Okay, so then from here, we look from left to right and compare digit by digit. Okay, so I'm putting them in order from least to greatest. So I have like 4 spots I'm putting them into. This is my smallest, this is my biggest. So if I start at the first digit, 0, 0, 1, 0, I can automatically see that this one's going to be my biggest one because it's the only one that has a hole. So 1.14, 1/1400 goes in the biggest spot. The rest of them, I don't know. They're going to be in the other 3 spots. I don't know which one comes first because they all have the same 0 as the same digit. So since they all have 0 as the ones place, I move over to my next digit. So my tens place. This has a 0, this has a 1, this one has a 0. I've already finished this one at this point, right? So 0, 1, 0. So the one with the 1 is going to be the next biggest one because it has 1/10 and the other has no tenths. So 0.13 is going to be here. Okay, so these two match still at the tens place. I go over to the hundreds place. They both have a 1 in the hundreds place. They still match, so I go over to the thousands place. This one has 4 thousandths. This one has 6 thousandths. So this is going to be my smallest, and this is going to be my biggest. Okay, so you're going digit by digit, and if they match, you move over to the next digit, match, move over to the next digit, and the smallest one is going to be in the smallest place. The bigger one's going to be the next one up. Okay, and the last way that we order decimals is using a number line. Okay, so if I drew my number line here, it's going to be 0. Let's say this is my 1, my whole right here. Okay, so I'm going to put my tenths in. So let's see. See if I can split it up evenly. Okay, there we go. So this would be 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10, and a whole. And then like within each one of these, let's see if I can, oops, sorry about that. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit. And see if I can write small enough here. Within each one of these, there's 10 places here, right? So this would be like splitting, I can't write it small enough here, but splitting this into 10 different spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So like 10 different places there. I'm not doing a very good job making them even, but I hope you understand the idea. 3, 4. So like each of those has 10 little tick marks there, and that would be hundredths, right? So like this would be, this first little tick mark right here would be like 0.01. This would be 0.02, and 0, so on and so forth. This would be 0.11, 0.12, so on and so forth. And then I really can't make it like that, but within each one of those, there's 10 more tick marks, and that would be your thousandths place. So let me put on my number line about where each of these goes. I can't do it exactly, but I can do about. So the easiest one starting off with is doing the 1 and 14/10, because over here, if I kept on splitting them up, this would be 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1 and 3/10, 1 and 4/10. So 1 and 1400ths, I think I said tenths a minute ago. 1 and 1400ths would be in between 1 and 1/10 and 1 and 2/10. So about right here. So 1 and 1400ths would be about right there in between 1 and 1/10 and 1 and 2/10. Okay. 1300ths
would be in between 1/10 and 2/10. It would be the third little tick mark right here. So the third tick mark right there would be 13/100. And then these other two, this is, so 0/10, 1/100th, 4,000. So 0/10, I don't even go up to this 1/10 right here. It's going to be in between 0 and 1. And 14 thousandths would be like way over here in between those two. So 0.14, I'm sorry, 0.014. So 14 thousandths would be right there, and 16 thousandths would be just a little bit above it. So I'm gonna write it down here. So 16 thousandths. So once you have on a number line, it's pretty obvious that the order here, so 14 thousandths, 16 thousandths, 13/100ths, and 1 14/100ths. That's the order from least to greatest. Okay, the last thing that we are going to talk about is rounding decimals. So let me zoom back out. Okay, so when I'm rounding decimals, so rounding decimals is the same basic principle as rounding whole numbers. Basically, when you're rounding, you look at the digit to the right of the place value that you want to round to. So you look at the digit to the right, and that number determines if you're going to round it up or keep it the same. So that, I wrote that backwards. That number determines if you round up or keep the same. Okay, so there's lots of different ways to teach rounding. Before, people have taught like on a number line with like humps showing like a ball. If it goes up on top of the hump, it needs to round up, or it rolls back, so on and so forth. I've also heard songs and rhymes and stuff. So I've heard 5 or more, you need to let it soar, so you bump it up. And 4 or less, you need to let it rest. Or I'm sure you've heard of multiple other things. And as you observe and do observations, you'll see lots of different ways to teach rounding. The one thing you need to know about decimals is any digit after what you're rounding to, you just ignore it. Okay, so let's do some examples of this. Let's say I have the number 8. And this would be 48,742, 100,000, 10,000, 100,000 is what this number would be. If I wanted to round this, round to the nearest 10th. The way I round to the nearest 10th is I take my number, so rewrite your number, 10th place right here. So I'm going to cut it off after the 10th place. This 8 right here, the 8 tells us if we change the 4 or keep it the same. Is the 8 5 or more? Yes. So 8 tells us to round 4 up. So this would round up to 8.5 and nothing after, because I wanted to cut it off at the 10th place. Okay. If I wanted to do the same number, so let's say it's part B, but this time I want to round to the nearest 100th. So the nearest 100th place would be, rewrite your number. So I'm cutting it off after the 100th place.
Okay, so I need to look at the thousands place and tell me, do I round up or keep it the same? 7 is a number bigger than 5, so it's going to round to 8 up. So 7 tells us to round 8 up. So this would be the number 8.4. 8 rounds up to 9. Okay, let me do the same thing, but this time let me round to the thousands place. So same number. This time we're rounding to the nearest thousandths place. Okay, so my number is 8742. So nearest thousandths. Here's my thousandths place. I'm cutting it off after that part. So I look to the number after the 10,000ths place. 4 is not 5 or higher. 4 says keep 7 the same, or let it rest, whatever, however you want to say it. So my decimal would be 8.487, or 8 and 487 thousandths. And I just ignore everything after it. Okay, there are certain situations where you have to bump it up a few times, so let's do a few of those. So what if I want to do 34.12999? The way I would actually read that would be 34 and 12,999. And again, we're doing 10th, 100,000, 10,000, 100 thousandths here. So 34 and 12,999 100 thousandths is how you would read that decimal. Okay, so let's do two problems here. Let's round to the nearest hundredth first. So if I was rounding to the nearest hundredth, so rewrite my problem. I'm going to cut it off at the hundredth spot. So I'm going to cut it off here. So 9 says to round this 2 up. So when I round 2 up, it would be 34.1. 2 rounds up to 3. So 34 and 13 hundredths. Okay. What about if I wanted to round it to the nearest 10,000th? Okay, notice real quick all my answers here. If I'm rounding to the nearest thousandth, I'm going to have a thousandths place. Hundredth, I have a hundredths place. So 10,000th. So 34.999. So my 10,000ths place is 10th, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths. I'm cutting it off here. Okay, so this 9 tells the other 9 to round up. Okay, so when I round this 9 up, 9 rounds up to the number above 9 is 10. Okay, so it's like I'm going to round this up to a 10, a 0, and I'm going to add 1 over here. Well, again, 9 plus 1 is 10 again, so I'm going to round up over here. So this number becomes 34.1300. Okay, and it should kind of make sense if you don't think about it as a decimal. If you just think about this number as 1299, if I wanted to bump that 9 up to 1 whole, like to the next number up, it'd be a 10, and I need to add a 10 there, so it's going to be like instead of 1,299, it'd be 1,300, which is what I have here. Also, so this is my answer. Also, sometimes people don't put the zeros at the end, and that's actually incorrect. Okay, so it's the 10,000th place, so I need to show that it's been rounded to the 10,000th place. So I need to have a 10,000th place value. Does 34.13, is that technically the same number as this? Yes, but there is a difference, and that's what your reflection is over this week. So it's a really interesting article. I hope that you read it and learn something from it of what the difference is between this number and this number. Okay, so technically like they're equivalent numbers, but there's a difference between the two, and that's what our reflection for this week is. So I hope you enjoy that. But when you're doing this problem, if you need to round up a few times, like if you have to bump it up a couple times, this is your answer. Make sure you put your zeros at the end.